My name is Nat Sicinas, and I am here to introduce to you Gerald Karwowski, who everybody already knows, I think. Jerry is, I'm a member of the Friends of the Racine Public Library, which is sponsoring this program. Jerry is an author and historian and has written a number of booklets and about Racine's past, and has entertained hundreds of groups with a show called Racine in History. He retired after a 30-year career at J.I. Case, and has served as a Racine Landmarks Commissioner and is a trustee of the Racine Historical Society. He's a devoted collector for the past 40 years, and he has gathered one of the largest local history collections in Racine County. He was on American Pickers program a couple years ago, and today he's going to give us a photographic journey through the Racine history, and here's Gerald Karwowski.
Whoever thought? Yeah. Okay. Push the one on the right to go left. We'll get by. I want to say something about the American Pickers. And you know, when you boil it all down, you know, years ago I ran for public office. Everybody was calling me governor, you know, and things like that. Now I was on the American Pickers. Now they're calling me the movie star. You know. But what I want to say about the American Pickers, when they did mine, nothing was staged, because that's the number one question that people ask. Was it staged? Nothing was staged. The other thing is that my program proves that you don't have to be a millionaire or have cars, you know, all these rare cars and neon signs. And you can just be a regular guy collecting things, and the American Pickers will come to your house. And what a good time. It was a fun time. So anyways, we put together this program on photographers. We don't have them all. I don't have Charles Studio or Hollywood Studio and that, but I got a little bit of a cross section beginning in the 1850s and kind of working through. The cameraman, and I just love this picture, them skinny legs. You know, he's ready to do a daguerreotype. Now, the earliest photographer that I could find, 1852, a fellow named Connor, daguerrean artist. Daguerreotype started in the 1830s, 1839 or so. It was and I do have some here. It was a process that was done on shiny copper, and they would take the photograph, take it in a dark room, and they would use mercury vapors to bring out the image. You always hear about the Mad Hatter? Mad Hatters used mercury to kill the bugs to make their hats, beaver hats. Photographers were using mercury to make photographs. It was a dangerous world back then. So, the one thing about daguerreographs and ambrotypes, they were expensive for their time period. Not everybody would get them. If you had a chance to get a charcoal drawing, that would cost you 10 cents. A daguerreotype might cost you 45 or 50. And that was a lot of money at one time. Okay, that's the second one. I got 3 notes, so bear with me with my 3 notes. And the reason I have to have this note, his name was Mesach Terry, and he was a daguerreotype artist at 144 Main Street. That'd be like the 400 block today. By 1908, there was a lot of photographers, mostly amateurs, a lot of photographers. They would get together in their camera club and show the pictures and that. I don't know exactly who all these people are. Some of them were visitors from Milwaukee, but the Racine Camera Club actually had rooms where they display all their portraits and things. This scene was taken about 1880. It's 5th and Main Street. The Johnson's Wax building is there now, that office building. And that e-billing started about 1872 in one history book, 1874 in another history book. Sometimes you don't know when they started, but he started in the early 1870s. The unique thing about that building, it's still standing, but not there. It's standing on 6th Street by City Hall, by the bridge. It was Mahara's Bar, the Mad Bar, different things. So it's still standing, this old portrait studio. It was actually built by a photographer named McHenry. Uh-oh. This is the one most of us would remember if you're from town, because it stood until 1977, corner of 5th and Main, same spot. When they tore the Venetian down, they tore this building down too. Somebody had taken thousands of negatives and piled them out on the street. And the artist at the Heritage Museum loaded up the car, took them to the Heritage Museum. They were down in the basement of the Heritage Museum. There was a flood. A lot of them got spoiled. But there are numerous portraits. They just set them out on the street. Nobody wanted this stuff. Nobody wanted it at all. It was meaningless. Nice advertisement for Billings. Billings was probably the longest operating photographer. And here he is. He took portraits, and as a sideline, all these photographers, like Billings and Thomas, they would do stereopticon cards. And so when you're in there paying for your portrait, they try to sell you a pack of stereopticons. You know, that's unveiling at the monument 1884, and that everybody should have at least one stereopticon viewer. You know, is this a Billings? No, this is a T-Luck. You'll be able to come up here and see these things. This is the main place, the old Nelson Hotel, but the stereopticon cards were like Beanie Babies. You had to have them. You had to find as many as you could. People enjoyed them. A lot of people have stereopticon viewers, but very few of them are in this condition. Never used, like brand new. So anyway, so Billings, he took pictures all around town. I always loved this one. The clothes, the bird lady. She's exceptional. They really dressed up. So what, you know, one of the things with these portraits, there's millions of portraits of people. 99.9% of them don't know who they are. They're in shoe boxes, they're in boxes. Who is that? You know, it's either from a certain town because it had a card on it, you know. But people just, they knew who the people were. There was no reason to write it on there. So identified pictures are pretty rare. Here's Edward Bishop, and he was Racine's postcard photographer. Other people did postcards, but not the scope of Bishop. This view is from 1898. It's card number 2. So that's an 1898 view. Root River, the D.P. Wigley building there, Main State Street Bridge. That's one of his first photographs. Another view, this would be about 1910, Island Park. The pavilion's still there. Now, you know, postcards were the rage. I mean, they were absolutely the rage. From 1902 to the First World War, everybody was sending cards. They'd send them daily. And the unique thing was that these photographers would take a picture of the new schoolhouse, the new library, the new factory. Every community was so proud that they had these new buildings. And then people would send these cards. Look what they built on the street. That's the Racine post office and Hotel Racine. This particular card is from a German set. I don't know exactly how many cards were in it, maybe 50 cards, and they all have that same color scheme. Every card had the same colors. The post office was torn down. Up in the tower, there's some gorgles, and they were moved to the zoo. It was a fishbowl and a planter in later years. But when they built that beautiful Victorian building, people complained it looked too much like a church. Bishop would take cards and create night views because night photography was pretty rare. And here already, he's up to 232 cards. This is about 1910. So in about 10 years or 12 years, you know, and the cards consistently go up. There's just literally thousands of them. Here's a pretty much unknown, Gustav Fiker, although in 1910, he's listed in the city directory as a photographer. So here he's out by the old rock faces and that along river up by the rapids by Horlick's Dam. This is a picture. They're eating Cracker Jack. There's a group of pictures that were taken. It was before 1904 because the asylum was still standing in the background on a number of pictures, but they had an outing out by the asylum, which is where the mall is today. And here these guys were enjoying some Cracker Jack. He went into a blacksmith shop, took a shot, a boat. Adolf Noll, a hobbyist, amateur photographer, went around taking pictures. They had the estate sale. A few hundred pictures turned up out of the estate sale. I got half of them. Somebody else got the other half. Here's one of his views of Horlick Mill. That was always very popular because behind the mill was an area called Horlicksville, and there were camps and cottages, and that's what it was, like a summer resort area on the river. And people would go up there and spend the whole summer at their little camp and the cottage up there. I remember going across that bridge riding horses from Horlick's stables. Very narrow bridge. Of course, J.I. Case. For some reason, all those tractors caught his eye. I worked for J.I. Case for 30 years. The thing about J.I. Case and them steam engines, Case made 36,000 steam engines. When they were making them, that's more than all the other manufacturers in the country made. They made 36,000 of them. Absolutely amazing. The thing with Case was, you could order an engine on credit. Any other company, you had to order it and pay for it. And then they'd make you your engine. But Case would make it, and then they'd put them in warehouses and sell them to you on credit. Moving trains, with the slow speeds of films and that, moving trains were hard to photograph, but he caught that one. That's a Chicago Northwestern. Because it's English, it's on the other side of the track going the wrong way. Peter Leonard and Harry Leonard. You know, They were at 333 Main Street. And for years, the father took photographs, the son carried on. I caught this picture that's gone now. Somebody tore the, they would post pictures up there behind the glass window, and that was on the step going into the store. The unique thing about Harry Leonard, he took the picture of Lillian Anderson, who became the Queen of the World's Fair in Chicago in 1933. And it was his picture that threw her across that threshold. But I was just kind of looking, Harry Leonard, under his advertisement, special photographer for Life magazine. Local guy. What happened to all his pictures? There's portraits, but all these pictures are all, nobody knows. Nobody knows where they went. He died in 1955, but a few years earlier, he moved from 333 Main Street further down the block. It was at that time he had to make the choice, is he gonna cart thousands of pounds of glass plate negatives to the new studio? And that's when most of them got thrown away. You know. However, I've seen original reprints off of some of his negatives, and there are things like 1898 of a Pennington automobile parked right out here in front of the library that he had taken for a publicity photo. So there are a few of those negatives around, but nobody knows where they are. There's another thing. Eastman Kodak had their salesmen picking up negatives, early negatives for stereoptic and cards and that from photographers all over the country. And when I called out there in Rochester, they said, yes, we have quite a big collection of Racine negatives. So, take a ride out to Rochester, right? Visit my brother, he's just down the road. So I go over there, nope, you can't see him. Nobody here has shown you. You know, yes, we do have some, and that's as far as that went. You know, and now I believe the company's out of business. So who knows? Maybe they went to the Smithsonian, Library of Congress, whatever. But I love that Life magazine. You know, so next time you get an old Life magazine, take a look. Maybe there's a Harry Leonard in there. Another one. You know, I've got all these thousands of pictures. I mean, thousands of them. What do you do with them? But the apparel. You know, you can get the Civil War ladies in their hoop dresses and all these different beautiful hats and all that beautiful apparel. It's got to have some value, you know. A lot of the other collectors laugh at me because they call me a bottom feeder because I get what everybody else doesn't want. And I just figure, well, tintypes, daguerreotypes, old photographs, they should be preserved as long as they can. So I don't know who they are, but they're really neat people. Some of them are beautiful, some of them are ugly. T-Lux Photograph Studio, 105 Main Street, 321 Main today. The building's still standing next to Dover Flag. T-Lux did stereo cards from 1881 of a great snowstorm. So he made a complete set of cards, the stereoptic and views. And here's some of his portraits. You know, we just, you know, you're going through boxes of things and saying, okay, what would people like to see? So we just gathered up some here and there. And okay, this one's a good one because I bought this collection like 1980. The guy begged me to buy it. I would go up to the antique bottle shows in Milwaukee. You gotta buy these negatives. What negatives? You know, what do I know about negatives or photography or anything like that? Oh, you gotta buy them. They're really neat. They're all Racine. And finally, I broke down and I bought them. You know, only because I was sitting at the lunch table at work, saying that this guy just keeps bugging me to buy these negatives. And the one young kid said, "Well, why don't you buy them?" He says, "I don't know anything about negatives." You know, he says, "I'll show you how. That's all you need is a light in a dark room." Really? So I bought the negatives, and then he brought his enlarger over and his little pans and that. What a miracle watching these, you know. But I bought 1,000 of them. 1,000 of them. You know, in the 1950s and 60s, the First National Bank was putting out calendars with historical pictures in them. And their first calendar, one of their first calendars in 57, had these Billings pictures of early Billings. And then they really touted the fact that 53 or so original Billings plates still exist, you know. And at that time, which is, you know, wow, you know. And then here, this collection, there's 1,000 in this collection alone. This is Wilford Marshall and his wife and his child in front of their home on College Avenue where the courthouse stands today. It's Wilford Marshall there on the left with the derby. He lived to be 99 and 10 months old. Took pictures from the time he was a teenager on. Literally 1,000 that survived, but who knows how many he took originally. This is out in Burlington. He was out there and took some pictures of Boy Scouts out in Burlington.
Where's Martin's Lake?
Just past Browns Lake. It's the Boy Scout McLean's or something now.
South side of 11.
Yeah. Here's Wilford Marshall. There's two views, one with his eyes closed and this one has his eyes open. I didn't have a picture for the slides with his eyes closed, but it was when he really isn't sleeping, and it was taken by Wally Drager in the 1960s. This is a rather rare photograph because the Hardy House is down there, looking down Main Street, and it's got a bubbler. And I want to tell you what drives me crazy. It absolutely drives me crazy when I go on Facebook and these people talk about bubblers. And then they show some kind of a handled bubbler and that from Kohler and this and that. When I was a kid, they turned them fountains on in the spring and they shut them off in the fall. There was no handles, no knobs, nothing. That fountain bubbled out of an egg-shaped, funny-looking spout all summer long. And when they turn around and talk about these handles on there, oh yeah, that's not a bubbler, that's a drinking fountain. Racine had bubblers. And that's the one that was there on above 14th Street Beach.
Oh my gosh.
Back in, I'd say this is about maybe 1910 or something like that. Kids playing with their airplanes. This one's from probably the 40s. And the pictures range that I have in the Marshall collection, they range from 1899. They go up to about 1945 or so. My kids are really pushing me to put a book together on it, and I really should, because it's really a fabulous collection. This they're doing 14th and Washington Avenue, repairing the road. But what I found interesting about this photograph, it's identified at that time as Columbia Corners. I always assumed it became Columbia Corners in 1909 when they put the Fountain of Columbia up. But it was already known as Columbia Corners in 1907, 2 years before. This is the the Ringling Cousins Century Circus. In 1906, they had a giant parade. And in that parade, all the businessmen got together and they created a circus atmosphere. So their wagons would have like lions and the lion tamers and all these different things related to the circus. And they came all through town. They came down Milwaukee Avenue and State Street and downtown. And then when they got to the square, they set up their circus acts. And these were all the mayor, the aldermen, all the businessmen and that, dressed up in their, you know, ringling or whatever, having their circus. This is 1906. This was after the parade, the streetcars, and this is the 500 block where the Johnson building is today. Baker building is there, Hotel Racine, the Porter's building, the Lathrop building, and the studios down there. This fellow is a photographer and a barber in West Racine. He crawled up in the sewers, taking pictures in the sewers, just all over the place. It was really neat. His name was Max Summerfield, and he operated a barber shop for years. And he took pictures of the churches and different businesses. Gethsemane, West Racine.
What is your?
Gethsemane.
Gethsemane. I never pronounce it right. You know, it's really something. I was born in St. Mary's. I've lived here my entire life. And when I say Racine, I say Racine. It's Racine. It is not Racine. It's Racine. According to how do you pronounce it on the internet. You know? I want to tell you, the American Pickers come over, you become this little celebrity or something like that. Mike Wolf saying Racine, I'm saying Racine, and then you get some Yahoo, you don't even know how to pronounce the name of your city. So I had to go, how do you pronounce it? Because, you know, and I had that once before. I was doing a program, and somebody said, you know, you're saying Racine, and you're saying Racine. What is it? And I said, quite frankly, I don't know. I don't know. The Pentecostal church, still standing, but I love the car in front of it. It kind of dates it. Christensen's gas station at Lathrop in Washington. Be the northeast corner. And there's still a car repair shop there on that corner.
Yeah, Stu's.
Looking down Washington in the West Racine area. No, you know, I'm showing you a few pictures. In this set here, there's probably 50 or 60 in the set. The Gustav Fiker, probably 100. The Marshall, 1,000. So I mean, and then here's Frank Stratifsky. I've got albums here of some of his pictures and that. He became a photographer in the late 1910s. He worked for a studio called Morris. It was next to the Zahns building on the square. Then it became Wilger's. And then they went out of business and he opened up his own studio, home studio. And he started his in 1916. Well, you know, I had seen some Stratifsky pictures, home studio pictures, and I had just bought that Marshall collection. So I'm calling up Gus Malmy, you got any pictures? You know, Holtz, do you have any pictures? All these different photographers, anybody that I could find that was still alive. Gus Malmy said, no, all the negatives are gone. We would clean the emulsion off and use them, the good glass for framing. So, what we didn't use for framing, we just threw away. There was the other thing that, like Charles portraits, that no, I can't leave any photographs out because they're personal property of the person in the picture. So no, there's nothing for sale, nothing to. But anyways, this is Betty Stratifsky. She was born in 1925. She died last year. Yeah. I started talking to her in 1980 about buying her father's negatives. I just wanted his early views, the first ones before he was a portrait photographer. Views around the city, fire stations, courthouse, whatever. And this went on for years. I mean, years. And one day I finally went up to the door and I said, are you ever, real assertive, are you ever gonna sell me them photographs? Well, you never offered to buy them. Here I'm sending her note cards, happy birthday or whatever, you know, will you sell me these pictures? And then finally she says, oh, come on in, you're a pain in the neck. We walk up the steps, the studio is still all up there. The backdrops, two different backdrops, one Gothic, the other one arched. We walked into the mounting room and she says, those are the pictures you want right up there, and don't be too cheap. So, yeah, I ended up buying them, and I wasn't too cheap. You know? And then I said, well, if you find anything else, let me know. I get a call out of the blue. Come on over, I found something else. Okay. So I go over there, we go up in the mounting room, and she says, I know you don't want them, but what about all of them? And here's all this, like these bookshelves, all boxes of negatives, all lined up. And I said, well, what are they? Portraits. Portraits of people. You know? These were portraits that they hung out in their display window. There's albums full of them. She said the only reason they're there is my mother couldn't get up there to throw them away. So here on the top two lines are boxes of 8x10 glass plate negatives, which would have been thrown away had she been able to get at them. You know, thank God she, did like crawling up on the ladder. But anyways, these are the types of portraits. Don't know who it is, but it's a beautiful child, And again, if you're studying apparel, for the Tater Guild or something like that, these are priceless. The other thing is that I used to get a magazine for, I was running a museum, and I was a member of this museum group, and I was getting these magazines, and the one fella was running an article, and it was all about clothing from the period, and he'd do close-ups showing patches on the clothing, lunches that are still on the vest, and things. And they, he had a regular column where he showed all these nasty-looking people.
Stop it.
But people only had maybe one or two suits of clothes back then. So I mean, they wore them until they really got rank, and then they'd change. There's one of the backdrops, And the unique thing about this home studio is that it was on Racine's north side, and he was a Bohemian. So a high percentage of the Bohemian families would come there to get their picture taken. So it really documents that group of ethnic people in Racine. Now, most of your photographers were on downtown here, Billings and that. Melmy was on the south side off of Wisconsin. You had, what's his name? Well, I think of him down the line. But anyways, this is kind of unique because one day I came down with this pile of pictures, And what they were, he would take pictures that people didn't pick up, never threw nothing away. Nothing, never threw anything away, believe me. But he would use it for drawing paper. This was an engine part that he was drawing. There's other pictures with beautiful hanky boxes in the Art Deco or Art Nouveau type of style that he had drawn on the back of these pictures. So I come down with a stack of pictures and told my wife, I says, you gotta look at these drawings are beautiful. You know? So she's looking at them, yeah, that's pretty neat. Yeah, okay, you know. Then that one, she sets the one off to the side. You know, we get done, and she said, would you go up and get my grandmother and grandfather's picture? You know? So I go upstairs, I get the picture from 1941, and she says, my God, this is my grandma and grandpa, because that's Uncle Royal and Aunt so-and-so. What are the chances of that? 1 in a million. So she calls up her aunt, the family historian. I got a picture of Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Royal and Aunt so-and-so. Now there's no picture like that. Oh, she says, oh, there's a picture like that. And what happened was, that was very common. You'd get a dozen different shots and you'd buy one, you know. And they probably had 2 or 3 different shots, and they ended up just buying the 2 of them together because they didn't have any money. A lot of times that happens. And we'll go into that too. You know, I got that one here somewhere. Oh, it's right here. And the picture. Anyways, going through all these thousands of pictures. And this couple just kept turning up. They were like bad pennies. Kept turning up different pictures and that. But you don't know who they are. You know. And then one day, I'm digging around and I found a packet, returned wedding pictures from the Journal-Times. And there she was. I knew her name now. And I'm gonna keep it to myself because, anyways, there she is, the bride. Wow, okay, now I know who it is. So I turned around and go on the internet, of course, punch it in, find his obituary. You know? So in the obituary, I get next to kin, I call up. Found it in a telephone book. You know the telephone books? Remember when you could actually find somebody? You know, days long ago. Anyways, I called up and I end up talking, I don't know if it's the grandson or the son or that, and he says, this is really strange, man. I never seen any pictures of my, you know, my grandpa and grandma or, no. But I'll give my dad or grandpa information. So the next day I get a phone call and he says, oh, you're wrong. There are no pictures, you know, of my parents. I said, oh, I think there is. Your name's so-and-so? Yeah, I think there is. No, you're wrong. Okay, I don't want anything for them. If they're yours, you know, you can have them. So, next day, 9 o'clock in the morning. Are you home? Yeah. Can my wife and I come out there to see those pictures? You know, sure. So they came out. He had tears in his eyes. They had gotten these pictures taken. There was like 4 sets of 12. That's pretty pricey in 1952. That's a pretty good set of photographs. And he got in a car accident, so they were never able to pick him up. He said he called his mother up, and she said, oh yeah, we had beautiful pictures taken, but your father had a car accident. We didn't have any money to pick him up. I says, well, now you got the pictures, you know. So I gave him these sets of pictures, but I didn't give him that one. And it was cute, because we're out in the parking area, And his wife said, "How come you're keeping that color one?"
Ah.
I says, "Because it's mine." She says, "What do you mean?" I said, "I paid for it. It's mine." You know? Oh. So the next day I went to Office Depot, made some color scans, and I dropped them off for him. But I mean, I like it. It's mine. But what's the chances of that? And I have boxes of these pictures that people never picked up. I know who they are because I have the ledger, and all of them are identified with a number, so I know who they are. But I haven't had a lot of luck, because where this one turned out wonderful for the family, and I was able to get it to them, I've called the people. We hated that woman. Why would anybody ever want a picture of her? Okay. George Thomas, 1869 to 1899. That was a pretty good run. And he was on the south side between 12th and 13th Street. Some of you will remember a place called the Studio. Okay? There's the studio. George Thomas's studio. However, they had put a front on the two buildings, on the house, between the house and in a front on this building. You'd never even know that building existed there behind that facade. But you went in this gate, and it was like a secret garden. It was very, very unique in that. And I went in there and I said, "Ah, this was an old photo studio." "Yeah, that's why we used the name, the studio." And I says, "Well, you got any pictures, negatives?" "No, I don't think so." She says, "You know what? Go down in the basement, take a look." Open up the trap door, small basement, and here's just one stack of these Thomas studio pictures. Bad shape, but one stack's better than none at all, you know. But there's literally thousands of Thomas pictures around. Again, pictures are pictures, but I can't bear to throw them away. You know. And then, so, you know, I've got the daguerreotypes, tintypes. You know, most tintypes were postage stamp size. A lot of them were real small because people could put them in their pocket and keep them. The bigger ones are relatively rare. You'll always know a Civil War era photograph. They had a tax stamp on them. This gentleman's Tom Rowley. He's a Racine kid. And it was done by I.C. Jones photographer, 142 Main Street. You know, I talked about Gus Malmy. Gus Malmy was the photographer for the boys of '76. I have one. What it was a large photograph, and then they would paste it on the board. All of the boys of '76 have this. I have just the flag for the Legion, the Racine flag bearer there for the Legion. But there's, I don't know how many people were in the boys of '76, 100 maybe? So there's probably 100 of these out there. But these were done, I believe, by Gus Malmy. Then you have the more of the pre-Civil War and Civil War type albums. A lot of cardivist cards in that. You're going to be welcome to look at these things. Then, of course, we go into the Victorian era. Beautiful cellulite albums, and, you know, just beautiful. This is a lot of local pictures, basically from the Monroe family. And that, but you always love the ones with like bicycles and baby buggies and things like that. But it's beautiful cellulite, Victorian. Nothing was flowery or fancy enough, you know? While these daguerreotypes were going on, and ambrotypes and tintypes, They were also making albumin prints. Here's an albumin print, original of Abraham Lincoln without his beard. October 4th, 1859. This particular picture came with a family collection from the Bushnells of Burlington. And I have the family collection. A relative was a personal friend and a senator from Illinois, and this was with his things in that collection. But that's albumin print. Right, back to this. F.L. Wright. I don't know his name. Frank probably. I took a lot of pictures. They had their own little nooks, you know. Billings took certain views. Thomas took certain views. T. Lux took certain views, and Wright took certain views. This was that 1906 parade. Actually, this part was on Milwaukee Avenue. We just took that was a telephone shot, afterthought. But he documented the guys coming home from the war. He did all the Chautauqua pictures. Everybody knows what Chautauqua was, right? Mm-hmm. The 1909 homecoming, and that's photograph number 75. So there's at least another 74 pictures, and who knows, there might have been 150 pictures taken that day. Now, there are a lot of collectors around with these types of photograph cards, you know, maybe 10, 15 different collections that I know of.
What high school would it be?
Pardon me?
What high school?
What high school?
Racine.
Oh no, that's in high school. This was the city's homecoming. Yeah. I never went to a homecoming for high school. Nothing wrong there, huh? But anyways, he did a lot of documentation. Here's another one, 1923. So we know he was still doing it. S.E. Johnson, YMCA Industrial League. And here's one from the Chautauqua. You know? And like I say, you know, what's that, number 41? And he might have took 200 views at the Chautauqua. I might have 50 of them. You know? Chautauqua was a gathering that took place up on Kenzie Heights, which would be a little between the Catholic Cemetery and Chicago Street, between Kenzie and the hill, over by McKinley School, where McKinley School is. They would camp out. There was a giant tent, and you would have all these orators, these speakers, singers, musicians, and it was a big camp out. Well, with a little religious, you know, hallelujahs and that mixed in, you know. But it was a big deal back in the 1900s, 1908, 1909, 1910. Remember, there was no computers back then. There was no television. There were no radios. You know, people were dying to do anything to get out of the house and get away from work, because it was work, 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 you know. So I think that was the last slide.
Yeah.
Now I have one more thing that I want to show you, and it's really, because I think this might do what it was meant to do originally, although most of you folks are not 4 or 5 years old. But here is the attention getter. Come on, smile. What do you call that, folk art? The photographer Strativsky made this and a number of other things too to get the attention of the kids to get their picture. But I just thought, and you know, it's really great. Here, the original box, and it says Donald Duck on there. You know, so that kind of dates it, 30s. You know. So now we're at the point of questions. Any questions?
You mentioned Milwaukee Avenue twice. I've only lived here 25 years and I don't know where that is.
It would be Martin Luther King Drive from State Street to High. That would be Milwaukee Avenue. And it had different names, Milwaukee Road at one time and different things, but it was Milwaukee Avenue. We've had a number of street changes, you know. Like Herrick Avenue became Memorial Drive, Lafayette became Memorial Drive, Forest became Memorial Drive. So, you know where all them places were?
Yeah.
You start on the north side, you get on Forest Street, then you cross State Street, you get on, Lafayette, then you go across 6th Street, you get down to Herrick.
Hi, has anything been written on the Racine camps, that summertime area behind the mill that you talked about?
I did one on the Venetian Nights.
Yeah, I got that, and that's actually what piqued my interest in knowing about more
That's
about
a
the
very
camps.
that's a very rare booklet.
Oh, yeah,
That's a very rare
it
booklet.
is. I don't even have that.
And that's something that I should really do. It's something that should be done. What happened was, okay, I'll give you, for instance, I found these negatives of the Klinkert House, which is the hotel by the depot in Sturtevant. And it showed the beautiful leaded glass walls and these guys playing cards at a table and that. So I wrote a story about the Klinkert House. And I went down to the Journal-Times and I said, here, I got this story and look at these beautiful pictures showing the interior of that Klinkert House. And the editor said, get out of here, don't want nothing to do with it. I could say his name, Chris Boltinghouse. Anybody that owned a restaurant cringed whenever they heard that name because he was the guy that went and ate and gave you the stars. If you gave it to him free, you got 5 stars. If you had to pay for it, you got 2. But anyways, he was the editor at the time, and he said, we have absolutely no interest in it at all. Well, okay, no problem. Then I said, okay, it's no good. But I go to the Shoreline Leader, little local weekly newspaper, and I said, look at this. I got these neat photographs and a story, and he says, well, we don't have any place to put it. I said, it's no good. Hold it a minute. This is Norm Monson. He's quite a character, wonderful man. I didn't say there was anything wrong with it. I just said we didn't have any place to put it. Who said there was something wrong with it? The guy from the Journal-Times. Who was that? Chris Boltinghouse. Oh, really? Leave it here. So I left it there. In the meantime, I turned around and I had bought more of this Marshall stuff. A shoebox full of already prints instead of negatives. And then I driving by the Shoreline Leader and I stopped in and I'm showing Norm Monson these pictures. Wow, I've never seen these before. I've been, for a year. I've never seen them. I said, nobody's ever seen them. They were hiding in the basement for, 80 years or whatever. Could we use some of these? I said, yeah, sure. So I get a call. Could you bring some more in? Okay. Brought more in. Then I get a call. Could you and your wife stop down here? Okay. Come on with me. We go in the setup room, the layout room. Pages all the way around the room. 24 pages. All of these Wilford Marshall photographs. When He Really Isn't Sleeping was the title. Picture with his eyes closed on the front of it. They ran it in a Shoreline Leader. It's a 24-page special edition. I get a call from the Journal-Times. Why didn't you come to us? And I said I did, but I didn't let them know that this was a whole different group of pictures. I did, but you guys didn't want it. So a lot of fun. And it showed off that Marshall collection. rather uniquely. And then like that booklet there, that was another newspaper article. I did a number of articles. It was called the Racine, R-A-S-C-E-N-E, and it was a special edition, and they would give me 12 pages in that. I mean, that's unheard of to get that much space in a newspaper. So that was a lot of fun.
So the sources for the Racine camps, I mean, you saw the photograph, but how did you know it was the camp? And is there a place we can look into that more?
I have all the Venetian Nights and the camp information at home. And then what it was is, you know, I buying that Marshall collection, I don't know, I got on this journey, and it became crazy. But the thing of it is that you got to meet all these neat people, you know, and you know, a lot of them Venetian Night pictures, a lot of them I copied. The guy had an album. He didn't want to part with the album. He loved the album, this and that. He didn't want to part with it, but he borrowed it to me, and I copied the pictures. So he died. This is a gentleman. He died, and I waited a little while too long. And I called up and I was talking to his daughter, and I said, yeah, I'm Jerry, and I had borrowed your dad's album, you know, with the Venetian Night pictures and that. And all of a sudden you get this, and I said, I was just wondering if you'd want to sell the album. And she said, you know, my mother and I discussed it, and she said you already had them, and we threw them away.
Oh.
You know, what a heartbreak. You just missed it. You never know. But at least I was able to get the copies, you know. And
You mentioned Columbia Corners. Was that also known as Racine Junction?
yeah. The original name was basically Racine Junction. And then it was kind of a factory center out there south of the city, Racine Junction. And then I learned now that it was Columbia Corner before they put a fountain of Columbia. There was a Statue of Liberty fountain there. It didn't last long. They dedicated it in 1909 during the homecoming, and by 1910, the wagons kept hitting it and everything, and it got destroyed. It knocked it off. It wasn't a real big Statue of Liberty, maybe 5 foot tall or something like that. But it got knocked over, her arms got broke. They picked her up, put her behind some billboards there. Somebody stole the arms and the legs. Should we get another one?
Still was Racine Junction prior to the statue going up.
Yeah, it was Racine Junction.
Would you explain how the coloring is done on some of the pictures?
Oh, these are all hand colored.
Yes.
There was no color photography. They had actual paints, special paints for doing photographs. And these photographers, almost all photographers were artists. They had to be to compete with all these other ones. There's a lot of hand colored ones in here, and it's amazing how beautifully they're done. You know, but then again, you know, that might cost you an extra $1. That was a lot of money.
Was that camp one called Thompsondale? Was that camp one called Thompsondale?
Thompsondale was upriver.
A little further down.
Yeah, that was up by Armstrong Park. That would be Thompsondale.
I found some of those glass negatives. Can you still get pictures made from those?
Yeah, you know what the problem with, you have to find somebody to print them. There's nothing wrong with a glass plate negative. They're going to last forever. You know, the first glass plate negatives, they had to put the chemicals on in a dark room, put it in a camera, go out and take the picture, come back in, take it out right where, you know, like during the Civil War when Brady was doing the pictures, and then you had to process them right there. They were called a wet plate process. Eastman Kodak came out with a dry plate. Now these dry plates, if you keep them dry in that, they'll last forever. But they can be printed. The only thing is you can't take them to a photo hut or Walgreens. They don't want to deal with them because they're glass. They might get broke.
You can take them to Spectrum School of the Arts. They have a darkroom printing. You can call Denise Singh and she'll print them for you.
There's somebody that, you
They're
know.
all on blocks of wood.
Yeah, she's.
Oh, them, they have to be glass. Now the
They're
blocks,
glass,
they're glass on blocks of wood.
but they're like on a block of
They're within a block of wood. Are they positives or are they negatives? They might be magic lantern views. When you look at it, can you see a real picture or is it a negative?
Oh, no, you can see the.
See the real, it's probably
No,
a,
I mean, I don't know.
yeah, that's probably, it's like a slide,
No,
but
it
it's a
looks
big
like-
one.
It looks like a negative.
Yeah, but they're pretty big. They're magic lantern
No,
slides.
maybe about that.
Yeah, 3 by 3, 2 by 2.5 by 2.5. Yeah.
They're historical, so.
They're probably magic lantern slides rather than photographic negatives. Yeah. Before they had slide projectors like carousels and that,
Oh, yeah.
they had the magic lanterns and they were bigger slides, and you would slide it in there and you'd project it. Without seeing them, I can't,
Yeah, okay.
How you doing? I'm looking for old Racine diner pictures. My grandma used to work at a diner called Big Tank Cafe. It was between Racine Transmission and City Hall, 833 Washington Avenue. And I don't know where to. Somebody told me to talk to you. I don't know where to go.
Take my card and send me an email,
Okay.
and then give me the information, and then I'll take a look.
Okay.
I've collected pictures now, I don't know, starting in the 70s. In the 70s, and so I've got a lot of pictures. I've got a lot of pictures I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have them because they're so valuable as being part of our community history that I shouldn't have them. But then again, you have other places where you go and they won't show you the pictures anyways, because they're too valuable to show you. You know, it's kind of a crazy deal. It really is. When I started out, older people were so pleased that somebody cared, that somebody would take this photograph and not throw it away. And then with the advent of eBay, $50 for a postcard, $1,000 for a picture, you know, and things like that.
You do that because you care.
Yeah, everything changed. It really changed.
I missed, I think, where you said the Chautauquas were set up. By McKinley, was it at the bottom of the hills?
Okay, actually, the gate was on Chicago Street. Chicago, yeah, but it was on top of the hill. Okay, and it was between Kenzie. All them avenues weren't there yet. That was all open field there. It was from Chicago Street to the Catholic Cemetery, and there was probably a row of houses on Kenzie already. And then it went over to the bluff. Yeah, this is all pre-McKinley School. McKinley was built in like 23 or something like that, so.
My mom lived in the Grove on Harvey,
Okay,
and remember seeing animals helping put up those tents.
Okay.
They were that big.
yeah, they were huge.
The whole neighborhood would go and watch these tents.
Yeah, they were giant, and then there's cards with like Carrie Nation, that woman suffrage leader, and I got a card showing Carrie Nation here in Racine, and then I'm digging through another bunch of, and here's a little Carrie Nation axe, you know, so these little keepsakes. Any more?
On Osborne Boulevard, how come the houses are on a slant?
That's the way that lots were laid out. By whoever laid out the properties, they laid out those lots, and then because it's a diagonal street, so they made the houses straight and the street is crooked.
Yeah, street's crooked.
Yeah.
Did you happen to come across any autochromes?
Autochromes?
That's the first commercially available color process. It was in 1910.
Yeah,
to
no,
1913.
it doesn't ring a bell for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Sometimes you find things you don't even know what it is. I mean, you have to look it up. But you know, it's hard talking about things these days. Years ago, there was no internet. And I could be sitting here talking to you, And you're there, that ain't right. Boy, I tell you, this internet has really beat you up a little bit, you know?
I thought you could distinguish whether someone grew up here or moved here after they do, high school college. If they said Racine, you knew they were from Racine. If they say Racine, which is what I say, then you know I didn't.
It all depends. It depends on if you went to Horlick High School, if you went to Park. It depends on if you went to, St. Patrick's or Lutheran High. You know, it's like if you live on the north side, you've got a twang from the north side. It's like, it's like an accent. I consider, we know where we live, But it's really fun. I didn't expect somebody calling me on it, though.
Would you explain, you talked about the dare types and the tin types, and then you named some other ones.
Ambral type?
Yeah, what is that?
Okay, I'll go through it. The daguerreotype would be the first one. This is a daguerreotype here. And it's an image that was projected on a piece of copper that had silver plating on it, really highly polished. They're beautiful images, but the shortfall of it is you have to move it around to be able to see the image. Then they came out with the ambrotypes, and the ambrotypes were a negative. Actually, it was a positive negative, and then it would have black paper behind it, and that you didn't have to move it around. So these here, they're like a negative that's in front of a black piece of paper. That's the ambrotype. And then the tin types were on regular tin or sheet steel, very, very durable. And this is very common during the Civil War, and a soldier, and you'll find a lot of them postage stamp size, where you could put it in your sleeve, you could put it anywhere, and have a picture of your loved one or family in that. With tin types and daguerreotypes, more people in the photograph was unusual. Most of the time they were individuals. And with a daguerreotype, the thing is, you had to sit still for 15 to 30 minutes for them to get a good image. So I mean, that was like a torture just to get your picture taken, But yeah, I don't know. People ask me what's going to happen to all your stuff. I'm not going to be here when it goes. I don't know what's going to happen to it. I just enjoy it, and it's absolutely wonderful that you invited me so I could take some of these things out of boxes and bring them here and show you. I have literally hundreds of boxes full of artifacts. I'm not the top of the line guy. I'm kind of the bottom feeder. But old thermometers and Horlick's malt milk cans and jars and bottles. It all started with bottles, of all things. I was looking for bricks and I found bottles. And that's how all this began.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.